of our outgoing director, Father Jason, who would have been here otherwise, but he's back in California, so he's got much better weather than we do. He's moving on to his next chapter, as Father was saying. So he has really been such a huge and important part of what this department has become today, and it's been a huge honor for me working with him the last year and a half. He's set a really wonderful tone, I think, that kind of guides everything that we're doing, a really wonderful and accessible philosophy, and that's kind of where I want to start tonight, because there's a couple things we can talk about, but I want to start with why we do what we do before anything else, which I think will give you a little bit of an insight into where we're coming from, and that will hopefully feed into later on culminating into ways that we can help you more, because interrupt with questions if need be, but I would prefer at the very end, at the very least, to turn things around and just to get feedback from you, because I'll kind of give you a layout of why we do what we do, what it actually is that we have that's available at the moment, and I kind of want to get a better idea from you about things that are working, things that are not working, ways we can be more helpful, because I think it's important for you all to get your money's worth, so to speak, from the Archdiocese. So if there's more that we can do for you, or if there's better things we can do for you, like, now's the perfect time to share it. Or I should say, maybe at the end of the presentation is the perfect time to share it. I just kind of want to give you a window into some of this philosophy that Father Jason has used to guide this department so far, and now as interim director, hopefully something that I can keep going. So, why do we do what we do? Why do we create these resources that I'll talk about in a little bit? Well, I think we start any sort of ministry because we believe the church is the body of Christ. It's kind of got to start there. It's sort of obvious, but it's worth saying. We're all united in Christ, and kind of like we talked about a little bit in one of our workshops today, segregating the church, by age or otherwise, destroys our unity. This is, I think, a mistake that sometimes we make when it comes to our ministries. Like we said a little bit earlier, we put our youth ministry in a box, young adult ministry in the box, etc., etc. We're one church, we're one body, and that I think is one of these just really important theological observations that has to guide what we're doing. You know, we've got to be very careful about refining things in a way that destroys our unity and begins sort of breaking us up into unhelpful components. We believe the gospel is inherently interesting. This is something that I think people wrestle with sometimes, because in my experience with youth ministry through the years, there's a tinge of panic, you might say, when it comes to youth ministry and young adult ministry. I think we're all anecdotally, at least acutely aware of the fact that there's this struggle that young people have, and there's this fall off that people have. They lose their interest over time. And so we wonder, and we figure out, like, how can we make the church interesting to these people? What can we do to make the gospel more interesting to these people? How are we going to get young people excited and motivated and whatever it is about the church? And we're missing the point there. The gospel itself is inherently interesting. The gospel itself is good news. It's the best news. Like, there is nothing better than the fact that Christ is risen. Nothing. That's like super, super interesting in and of itself. If we're not getting through to people, if the gospel is coming across as boring, I challenge us to think maybe it's not the gospel that's boring, but it's the way that we're giving it to people that's boring. Or we are sort of creating a filter between them. So I think at the end of the day, it's simply about preaching the gospel. It's not about gimmicks, it's not about whatever it is, it's simply about unvarnished truth. It's about the joy of Christ's resurrection. It's about the joy of being part of his body. And that, I think, again, is one of those things that just informs everything that we are all about. And should inform everything, I think, that we are generally all about in terms of our parish ministries. The gospel is awesome. We just have to share it with people. And I think a lot of times we wring our hands and we kind of think of programs and so forth, and we don't let the gospel speak for itself. It's beautiful. We just have to share it. We believe the faith must be translated. Now, I don't want to get into a language thing here necessarily, right? But I think we honor St. Cyril and Methodius for a reason, right? We honor St. Cyril and Methodius because they went into this land, and there were people there who were missionaries who were not speaking their language, and so they said, we're going to preach the gospel to you, because the gospel is beautiful and awesome and amazing, but for you to understand it, we're going to speak in your language. I think that's incredibly important when we're thinking about youth and young adult ministry in particular. Because even though youths and young adults, they speak English, right? They speak Greek, whatever it is, you can say that there at the very least is a different dialect when it comes to people of a younger generation. So in that sense, we have to give them the gospel in a way that they can understand. Maybe a child with a short attention span is not going to want to sit and read a 1,000-word article, right? Maybe I have to read the 1,000-word article and produce sort of a flashy video because that's what the kid is going to understand. As long as the substance of the faith is there, as long as the substance of the gospel is there, it doesn't really matter, right? St. Cyril and Methodius were preaching the gospel. They weren't preaching it in the holy languages of Greek or Latin or Hebrew or anything like that, right? They were bold and they were doing it in Slavonic, but it's still the gospel. And it's still the gospel if it's on YouTube, or it's still the gospel if it's on Twitter, or it's still the gospel if it's on one of these newfangled things that we're working with. As long as it's the gospel, that's the part that's important. We do have to realize that different people are going to hear the gospel in different ways. And something that might appeal to those of us of a particular generation might not necessarily appeal or be comprehensible even to those of a younger generation. So that's kind of our challenge. Related to that, we believe that technology is not inherently suspect. I think sometimes we have a little bit of a distrust about technology, but our philosophy these last few years is we've got to use it. I think here in the Metropolis, obviously, under the leadership of His Eminence, we can totally see that. Technology and the ways that we can communicate with people is a beautiful gift. Those of us who lack the ability to be clairvoyant and to sort of remotely speak with people around the world can talk to them in a different sort of wireless way. We can talk to them with Facebook, we can talk to them with YouTube, etc. And that's what we've been trying to do, and I think people are so enthusiastic about it because we haven't really done a lot of that in years past. And that now, Family Ministry was talking about webinars and so forth, I think this is just kind of the direction that we're moving. Because this is where people are. People are on their phones, so we're going to be on their phones. People are on their computers, so we're going to be on their computers. To quote Nick Shakos, it's shock and awe, right? Everywhere you turn, there must the soldiers of Christ be, ready to do their duty. We believe in being honest. This, I think, is something that's very difficult for people in ministry. I think I noticed this when I was younger, I guess. There's a fear about broaching certain taboo topics. Youth are aware of that, and if youth see us dancing around difficult topics, they're going to check out. Because life is difficult, and they face difficult choices in difficult situations every day. We saw this during the family ministry presentation as well. Melissa was talking about that. You've got to be honest that families go through difficult situations, individuals go through difficult situations, sex and drugs and suicide, and these things can't simply be taboo topics because they're part of our reality. And if we're unwilling to be with people in their most vulnerable moments and to engage with people about their most vulnerable moments, and they're going to check out. And those vulnerable moments are kind of the difficult things that people are working with. And if we're not there at those most difficult moments, what's the point? Christianity isn't, the cross came first. You've got to stand at the foot of the cross. And the resurrection comes afterwards. We believe in giving people what they need rather than what they think that they need. This is, I think, always a challenge with ministry. And I think this is also a challenge with intergenerational ministry. That sometimes we approach youth or young adults and we say, you need this. And it goes in one ear and one out the other because that's not really what they need. I had a laugh one time when I was in a parish and the priest was giving his sermon and he started talking about tarot cards, of all things. And he went off on this 30-minute exposition about people who are going to tarot card readings and this and this. I'm like, fine, but I don't think anybody under the age of 50 or 60 in the audience cares really about that. a sermon, or if you don't think it's appropriate in a sermon, at least some sort of discussion about the addicting effects of internet pornography, or violence in schools, or the pressure to do drugs, or the sort of bullying that people can experience online, like these things that people actually experience, as opposed to maybe the problems of 40 or 50 years ago. Like, I don't think that tarot cards are as big of a problem on a daily basis as, one of these other problems that I just mentioned. So we need to be very sensitive to the actual needs of the people that we're ministering to rather than the perceived needs of the people that we're ministering to. And that takes getting to know people. Like, that takes being with them. It takes asking them. Asking kids what they need, asking kids where they are, getting to know them, getting to know what's going on in their lives, getting to know what's going on at school. Dialogue, in other words. If we are going to be in a position to speak, we also need to be in a position to listen. And I feel like so many times our youth ministry and young adult ministry is very one-directional. The kids don't simply need us to talk at them. Sometimes they just need somebody to listen to them. Sometimes they need a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes the communication has to be working reverse. And of course, by doing that, we are communicating something. Because by patiently listening to somebody, you are communicating God's love to them. And that is something that can be communicated sometimes more powerfully through our patient and loving and quiet presence than through a very well thought out presentation or curriculum or something like that. We believe ministry isn't about numbers. I think this is a temptation that most, I'll say at the very least, youth workers get into. And I think it's terrible. I can see where it's coming from, though. So, okay, think about this. How do we define success? Oftentimes we'll talk about a Goya meeting that happened, and we had 50 kids show up at the Goya meeting. Okay, on the one hand, yes, it's better to have more kids there than not, right? But does the fact that 50 kids showed up at a Goya meeting necessarily make it better than if 25 kids showed up at the Goya meeting? If 50 kids showed up and none of them met Christ, is it a success? If only one kid showed up, but that kid's life was changed because he encountered Christ for the first time, like, which one is more successful at the end of the day? We have to be careful about using simple organizational metrics to define success. Because the church isn't simply another organization. The church isn't simply a club. Like, based on success, based on numbers, I should say, we're abject failures, right? And how many Orthodox are we in this country? As a percentage of the population, we're like 1% maybe on a good day. If numbers are the thing, then we might as well close up shop. So I think on a more micro level, we should be careful about that. It's not having more kids necessarily in the program this year rather than last year. It's also a question of thinking critically about what we're doing. Like, are these kids actually encountering Christ? Are we showing Christ's love to them? Are they getting something out of this rather than just showing up? What makes us different? Because if it's simply about how many people we sign up, then the church is kind of it's like a signature drive. It's about it's about marketing. It's about numbers. It's not about Christ. It's not about ministry. Another one that's difficult. We believe ministry isn't about the good ones. I think this is a temptation that we sometimes fall into, and I think this is something that is super transparent to kids and young adults too, and I think people generally. Take a step back and think about, again, the sort of success stories that we can think of from our time in ministry, or maybe our favorites from ministry. I think most of us are probably tempted to think of the good kids. We think of, like, what have we done right in our lives? It's the kids that are acting well. It's the kids that are sort of the model students, whatever it is. Does that mean that the kids who are not are failures? Does that mean that the kid who's going through a really difficult stage at home and is acting out as a result, are they failures? Or is that life? Like, Christ came for the lost sheep, right? We can't pride ourselves on the ones who are the good ones. Because I think a lot of time what happens is that the kids who are growing through those taboo situations, the kids that are having sex, the kids that are doing the drugs, the kids that are getting involved in gangs, the kids that are doing whatever, if they feel like we see them as failures, they're not going to come back. If they feel like this is not a safe place for them, if they feel like they're being judged, they're not going to come back. Because what's the point? Why expose yourself to judgment at that point? Why go to a place where you're not actually being loved or accepted? Right? It's not about. There's a wonderful line. I think it's Father Stephen Freeman, he's a podcaster and a blogger. He said, we've got to remember that Christ did not come to make bad men good, he came to make dead men live. I think that's powerful. You know? Because we're all bad men on some level, right? And if that's really the key to the kingdom, it's going to be very, very empty on the inside. They're good kids and bad kids. It's just that we think about it in those terms, but it's not helpful because the bad kids are going to know when we think about them as bad kids. The failure kids are going to know when we think about them as failures. It's better to think about them as ministry opportunities. Ministry is ultimately about showing the love of Christ to these people. And honestly, it's the ones who are going through these difficult situations, the bad kids, the ones that we sometimes think of as failures, that need it more than the good kids. They're the ones that we want to make sure are coming back to these Goya programs. They're the ones that we want to make sure aren't being alienated by what we're doing. They're the ones especially that we want to make sure are welcome. If anything, they should be our biggest concern. So, what do we do? So one of the things that we do, probably our most well-known thing that we do so far is Be the Bee. Be the Bee is it's a series that we put on YouTube, weekly short engaging topics. We're getting close to our 50th episode right now. I'm curious, just by a show of hands, has everybody sort of just familiar with the program or not familiar with the program? Or okay, for the most part, that's cool. Okay, no, that's good. That's good. It's fun. Thank God it's well received. I think it's a versatile sort of resource. It's the sort of thing that can be, I get emails from people saying like, oh, thank you for this resource. I get to watch it at home with my kids. Or thank you for this resource. I get to use it with my kids in Sunday school. Or thank you for this resource. I'm a 75-year-old grandmother and I watch it at home by myself. Like, it's the sort of thing that's useful in different places and different topics. So this is last week's episode, which is a new introduction that we did, and I'd be happy to play it for you all, especially for those who haven't maybe seen the series yet. So we don't have a direct audio hookup, but let's see if this works. I apologize for my energy level in the video. To answer that, I need to suit up. Can you hear? These are really amazing creatures. They live together in complex societies and play a very important role in nature, pollinating flowers and making a lot of the food we eat possible. And Be the Bee is an awesome metaphor that goes back at least to St. Basil the Great, who used it to answer a difficult question people had. People wondered whether it was okay for Christians to read books by non-Christians. There was a fear that reading books by pagans, like Homer's Iliad or Plato's Republic, would compromise one's Christianity and lead one astray. That's why St. Basil jumped in with Be the Bee. In his address to young men on the right use of Greek literature, St. Basil suggested that we approach non-Christian works, like bees, approach flowers. Just like bees only take the good nectar from flowers, we should only take the good from whatever situation in which we find ourselves, and leave the rest behind. St. John Chrysostom took things a step further when he explained the reason bees work so hard to collect the good nectar. The bee is more honored than other animals, not because she labors, but because she labors for others. Bees are part of a hive, a wider community, where they all work with and for each other. And it isn't just other bees that benefit. We also benefit from the labors of a hardworking bee. So being the bee is about taking what's good out of every situation and sharing it with others. And it goes even deeper than that, right to the heart of what it means to be a Christian. Elder Paisios of Maldatos, a 20th century saint, pointed at this when he used the metaphor. Here's what he said about being the bee. When a bee is found in a room full of
there is a small piece of sweet in a corner, it will ignore the dirt and it will go to sit on top of the sweet. Now, if we ask the bee to show us where the garbage is, it will answer, I don't know. I can only tell you where to find flowers, sweets, honey, and sugar. It only knows the good things in life and is ignorant of all evil. Though a fly is drawn to disgusting things, to garbage and filth, a bee is drawn to what's sweet and beautiful, and won't even pay any attention to the dirt. Orthodox theologians sometimes talk about apathia, or passionlessness. You see, sin is something we suffer, something that takes away our freedom. We see this in extreme cases, where it seems like we can't help but fall into sin. I hear something, so I fall into anger. I taste something, so I fall into gluttony. I see something, so I fall into lust. We see this really well in the parable of the prodigal son, where the son's choice to sin ended up taking away his choices and led him into a terrible situation. But a bee isn't changed by sin, by the dirt and distractions that can take over our lives. A bee is so free it doesn't even notice the garbage. It goes straight to what's sweet. And that's a really important part of our life in Christ. To not simply filter between what's good and bad, but to love Christ more and more, so we don't worry about anything else. So we're too busy loving Christ to even notice the things that would otherwise make us angry or prideful or lustful. The garbage that distracts us and pulls us apart from each other and from God, rather than bringing us together. But of course, it's really hard to get to that point of passionlessness. But by God's grace, it's something we can work on together every week. I know that making Be the Bee is a really important part of my spiritual life. And I hope that watching it is just as helpful for you. And though it's an important part, we can't forget that it's a part of a larger whole. Praying and fasting and helping others aren't just things we should talk about on Be the Bee. They're things we should do in our lives as we try to be the Bee. We can't forget that our goal is Christ. To not just be with Him, but to be a part of Him. Part of His body. This is the church. No matter how much we pray or how much we fast or how good we are to others, it's incomplete without the divine liturgy. It's incomplete if we don't offer ourselves and the whole world up to God, so that He can transform us and the whole world, and free us from sin and death, so He can offer us the sweetest thing of all, an eternity in His kingdom. So let's be the bee and find God in everything, every day. Be the bee and live Orthodoxy. Remember to like and subscribe. I'll see you all next week.
So, apologies about the sound quality wasn't terribly good. So, like I said before, the faith is inherently interesting. I think you can talk to kids and young adults and people of all ages about St. Basil and about St. John Chrysostom and about Elder Paisios and about apathia and about, sin and things like that. It's just give them it. It's interesting. Just make it speak it in a language that they will understand. I think people like it. Like it was crazy when we were at Clergy-Laity, the Archdiocese of Clergy-Laity, and like these 10 and 11-year-old kids were running up and was like, oh, I really love this episode that you did on blah. And it's like, awesome. Like, it's really cool. Like, people are actually watching it. The faith is interesting. It's not boring. You just have to give it to them. That's all. So I think it's a sort of resource that has a wide variety of applications. People are using it in their Sunday school programs. People are using it in vacation Bible school, summer camps, lock-ins, retreats, family viewing, and just it's on your phone whenever you want to watch it. And God willing, this is only the first step, and we want to do more on YouTube in the future, but step one for now. What we've done also to kind of take this and make it a little bit more applicable, both for parishes and also just for family viewing, we created a Be the Bee resource page. And so now what you can do is you can go to this website. It's still in process, but I wanted to share it with you all. Every episode will, once it's complete, be linked to a Model Joy level lesson plan, a Model Goya level lesson plan, which then can be applied for Sunday school or vacation Bible school or whatever it is, as well as 4 or 5 study questions, if you don't want to just do it in a full-on lesson, but just kind of have some study questions, as well as some supporting articles and reading for the teacher or the presenter. Like if you saw that episode and you want to actually read St. Basil's letter to young men on right use of Greek literature, there'll be a link in there so you can actually read St. Basil for yourself and kind of get a better idea of what's going on. So this is in the process of being finalized. If there are any youth workers in the audience who are good at writing lesson plans and would like to help, because we're a very lean office and we're looking for volunteers, that would be super awesome. Please connect with me after this presentation, because that would be fantastic. And the website is b2b.goarch.org. So that's one application of B2B. The other is we're going out and doing retreats. I'm getting out of the office once or twice every month, and it's nice to be able to actually just go out there and give this message to kids, because even if it's nothing but like the introductory message, even if it's nothing but, I shouldn't say nothing but because this is still important, that the light of God can never be overcome, that no matter how difficult your life may be, God is always there, that the resurrection will always follow the cross. That's important because kids deal with bullying, kids deal with emotional issues. Like, all of us need to know that God loves us. And I think the reason that a lot of people are gravitating towards this series is because it's just something we try to communicate as plainly as possible. God loves all of us for who we are, with no expectation of anything from us. That's actual unconditional love. No agenda behind it, just selfless love. And He's always there, with His arms wide open. And in our very difficult moments, it's very difficult to see that. But it's nice, actually, to be able to stand in front of a room full of kids and tell them that and see that sort of moment of recognition. It's something that I need to hear myself in my more difficult moments as well. It's something I think all of us need to hear. So if nothing else, there's that. The retreats are fun. We actually started in this Metropolis on Holy Thursday at St. Nicholas in Bethlehem. That's a picture from that first retreat. We've done a bunch more since then. Custom designed retreats for parishes. Usually we try to have at least one educational session. We try to have at least one service session as well to try to apply that faith so it's not just kind of passive reception of knowledge and information. We try to do some sort of service component where they're giving back to their community as well. Try to add some sort of activities, but they're custom designed. And also while I go out, I sometimes do training for youth workers as well. So if this is something that your parish would be interested in, be happy to see if we can fit it into the schedule. So it's cool. I was in Houston a couple of weeks ago. We had 115 or 120 kids there as well. So they can go from large parish-wide presentation to smaller talks just focused on youth. But I go out there and I do young adult talks and stuff based upon this as well. So it's nice to be able to connect. But again, given technology, sometimes we've actually gone and connected with parishes remotely. So I kind of Skyped in with parishes when it's difficult to actually get out of the office and fly across the country. So if there's anything that we can do, if this is the sort of thing that you think would be helpful to the kids in your parish or something, let us know. So next resource, Exegeneous. Exegeneous is a long time coming. It's the sort of thing that started back when I was a seminarian, actually. And a couple of my friends and I, Father Alexei actually was one of them, we met with Dr. Beck, who's the professor of New Testament theology at school, and we started going through the weekly Sunday Gospel readings, doing exegetical work, and kind of preparing notes. And the idea was to just have a ready volume of notes for sermons when we graduated. And it was Dr. Beck's dream for a long time to figure out a way that we can take this resource and make it presentable to people. Because, like I was talking with Jamil from Ministries about this earlier, like we do a lot of good work at seminary, and it just kind of falls into a black hole, and we don't figure out ways to actually use it in the world. So then a friend of mine from Yale actually started this website called Rap Genius. The original name of it was Rap Exegeneous, actually, because he wanted Rap Exegesis, I should say, because he wanted a place where people could create notes to explain rap lyrics, because that was his passion, and it turned into this massive project. So we piggyback off of them, and we started uploading the weekly Sunday Gospels onto this website. And you can simply go through and access the Sunday Gospel and click on some highlighted text, and you will have access to patristic quotes, to some exegetical work, to what the word is in the original Greek and why that's important, to multimedia sometimes as well, videos, podcasts, just all sorts of things to give one context for understanding the gospel a little bit better. So this is just kind of a little short video that you can see how it works. It's now on the Go Watch website. So you just go click on the highlighted text, and it's kind of like having footnotes essentially embedded in the text. And you can go and read and see what St. John Chrysostom says about this, or you can go and read, how often this word in the New Testament is used in the Old Testament, and it's kind of a wealth of information and the ability to take something that's so critical, the Scripture, which is something we're so bad at as Orthodox Christians, and just kind of reconcile that. So there's wide application for that. People can use it in Bible study, they can use it in OCF meetings, Goya meetings, sermon preparation. I've had friends of mine from seminary who said that they sometimes use it when they're working on their sermons. Because it's good work. Not everybody has access to a theological library, but now it's a way to, again, take that information and present it to people, hopefully in a way that they can comprehend. So those are our two big resources. We've got some other resources that are temporarily in abeyance, just given the lean staffing of our department. Yeah, so this originated on the site RapGenius, just now genius.com. You can create an account there. You can log in via Twitter. You can log in via Facebook. And so if you go there, you can actually make suggested annotations, and you can kind of have a dialogue about some of the things on the annotations as well.
Which website?
So the website is exegenius, exegenius.goarch.org. And right now, what's on there is there's the readings from the Triodion, and there's the readings from the Pentecostarion, and we're in the process of starting up again in the fall for the Lucan cycle, which we're in now. It's our preference is that people don't sort of go and just kind of make random annotations directly on it. If they want to leave a comment in an annotation, it's one thing, but it's sort of theologically vetted by the time it gets there as a presentation of the department, so it's not just kind of like a Wikipedia of theology, which could get dangerous. But interactivity is encouraged. So other resources, there's the Ladder, our blog, which we actually haven't done in a couple of months because it's just been super busy, I apologize. Our outgoing director had a podcast that he was working on called OL with FJ, where he took the concept of Orthodox life, which was a really wonderful camp session usually turned it into a podcast. That's now sort of in abeyance because he's left the department, but old archives exist, and it's a good resource. What's in the works? There's a new podcast that we're working on, which is going to be a companion podcast to Exegenius. This is going to be available on Ancient Faith Radio, hopefully by October, depending on time availability. But it's a podcast that's going to offer a short little exegetical sermon that's kind of focusing on one or two particular words or a short passage of the gospel reading. So it's a way for somebody to be able to use that in connection with Exegenius, and for somebody to be able to just listen to a 6 or 7 minute sermonette on the go. A tiny sliver of what you can talk about in any given gospel reading, but again, it's about planting seeds and it's about education. It's not meant to replace anything. It's just kind of meant to offer people more resources and the sort of thing that if you're riding the bus to work or you're in your car, might as well listen to something Orthodox rather than not, right? So that's what we're working on there. We're working also on hopefully having some more YouTube videos coming up, because that seems to be the most popular thing of what we're doing. We've got 2 or 3 series that are sort of in various stages of creation, but God willing, in the next couple of years, we'll have a bunch of stuff. So I want to keep this short and sweet, and now is where I kind of turn it over to you. I really want to know what's your analysis of what we're doing so far? What are we not doing that we should do? What can we do better? I mean, how can we better serve you? You're out there, you're actually doing the ministries. We're just messing around on YouTube. But what can we actually do to help you who are doing the real ministry? What sort of tools do you need for your arsenal? What sort of topics do you need us to cover? If you can't think of questions now, I mean, seriously, feel free to email us or call us. For B2B, we take requests. I have an Evernote with 25 topics that I'm working on at this point, so feel free to add to that. It's like we said, it's not about what I think people need to hear, it's about what people want to hear. So, like, you tell me what is going on in your Goyas, what is going on in your OCFs, what's going on in your parishes. What can we do for you to get your money's worth, basically? And with that, I'm pretty much done with the sort of department intro.
Before you open it up for questions,
Please.
may I have a request that you show us what we're episode?
Oh, yes, yes. Let's see if we can resolve the sound issues a little bit.
Well, while Steve is setting this up, hopefully we can get this microphone going too. Because we're videotaping this as a resource for all of our parishes, people who couldn't make it to the Metropolis Clergy-Laity, please, if we get the microphone working, come to the microphone to ask your question. Or Steve, if we don't get this working, just repeat the question, or in a synopsis version before you answer.
Definitely. So we'll play we'll do this.
There we go.
We'll play another episode of B2B. His Eminence earlier mentioned what's going on at Ground Zero, what's going on with the St. Nicholas, which was destroyed and is being built. We did an episode of St. Nicholas actually for September 11th, and hopefully it does a decent job of kind of explaining what's at stake and why this is an important building project. I mean, I know His Eminence was there when he was Chancellor of the Archdiocese, so he gets it as a New Yorker. I get it. Hopefully, this is just a way to explain why it's important.
Turn the lights down. The lights will turn down.
I just went for a